And I would show them like the videos, like, yeah, here's my father in the news, right? Oh, here's my sister on a talk show. Oh, here's a federal subpoena. Or the best one for the engineers were, oh, hey, I was at the Playboy Mansion last Saturday. Oh, here's some pictures. Kind of a surreal moment. It's like, I'm this street kid from Chicago who's meeting Hugh Hefner, sitting there trying to hide my excitement, trying to be professional. And meanwhile, I feel like Ralph Cramden on the honeymoon day.
You go to one of these parties, you come back home, you start your day job again, and you start, selling 19,500 components, and you start going back into
quite a difference in excitement, I suppose. It was fun to share those stories, and it was exciting, especially when I started getting paid. Oh, here's pictures and stuff like that. You were technically not supposed to bring cameras to the party, but some of us were able to get away with it only because we knew all the insiders.
This would be the first time you ever broke the rules, though, right, John?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, John, thanks for joining us here on Micro Journeys. Great to have you as a longtime friend. I mean, here at your house, it's great to, finally be able to sit down with you.
Yeah, second time we're here with all the microphones and stuff, right? This time no teleprompter, though.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? Fox News or Fox Business?
It was
like that,
Fox
right?
Business, and I think the show was called Tech Impact, as I recall.
Yeah, so I think that was about a year ago, maybe a little longer than that. So
Could have been a little bit longer, as I recall.
well, you have a very interesting story, not only with your work career, your personal life. Grew up in Chicago, right?
We're going to go down that road, are we?
All right.
No. Yeah, I was born in Chicago. I actually on Lakeshore Drive, and everybody used to say, hey, he was born on LSD. That was the big joke then. And but I'm a North Sider. I was born there from a very, 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 very blue collar working class family. I mean, being polite, of course. And I just, at some point, I'm like, you know what? Maybe this blue collar stuff isn't for me. This is hard work, man. I grew up a bunch of Teamsters, a bunch of hardworking guys. Most of them were like in the roofing business or construction, or in the winter, I know they used to do tug pointing and aluminum sliding and siding, that is, and gutter work, and then insulation. But because the winters you can't really do much roofing. And I remember doing like hot jobs and working the kettle and hoisting like gravel and tar up onto 2-3 story buildings, and it was very laborious. And at the end of the day, man, you were wiped out. But I did it as a teenager for many years in between high school and college, attending. And then, because I would go back and forth from Chicago and Los Angeles at one point because my parents moved out here. And that's a whole long story. But the bottom line is I spent a lot of time in both spots. But when I was working, it was with them. And these were all really hardworking blue collar guys. And it was backbreaking work. And but afterwards, we would always go down to the lake, and just a lot of underage drinking. I think I was like 15, 16, 17. And we used to, that was the hangout. And we used to sit out, and we used to tie our beer to a string and then put it in the water. So when cops come by, they don't really see the thing. Oh, we'll pour those out,
Yeah.
But for the most part, the police left you alone. They had much worse crime, especially in the 70s, to deal with than kids drinking beer at the lake. But at one point, though, it got so bad because there's a lot of drug dealing down there. I mean, you would just sit there and park, and people walk by, hey, want to cop some this, want to cop some that. And I'm like, wow, you can get drugs from A to Z here, right? They started breaking it up, I think, at 11 o'clock. And what they would do to discourage it is, and this is when cops could get away with stuff, a little more or less, the tactics they use. I mean, they were effective. You mouth off to a Chicago cop, plan on getting your ass, plan on getting beat up, back in the alley, and have them hit you with a nightstick or something. But in those days, they would say, okay, they'd haul you in, I don't know if you've seen a paddy wagon.
Oh yeah.
But they shove kids in a paddy wagon, and they go drop them off in a neighborhood they shouldn't be in. And that was their way to deter it. Because I remember I got shoved in one of those before with my cousins. And
was this one of those things where you could do a horse trade? Like, hey, you know what? Hey, leave me alone. Here's $100,
Not when it's that big of a group.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're pushing you all in. And like I said, they could get away with that at a time. But before that, say if you're on the tollway or the expressway and you get pulled over, back in those days, the Chicago police actually were the ones that patrolled. They didn't have like highway patrol, but you would always, I paid my way out of tickets several times there. And, but then since the city wasn't collecting any money, then the state troopers took it over. But I did, I mean, just petty stuff. Like if I'm parked at the, if I'm waiting, I'm at the airport waiting for somebody and a guy comes in, I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? Yeah, just here a couple seconds. Here's my license. And, with $10 you could get away with. And, oh, okay, cool. You're good. So yeah, those were a long time ago. Don't forget my grandfather on my maternal side, my mother's father. He was a beat cop for 23 years under the original Mayor Daley. So
Oh,
he was
interesting.
he saw as much corruption. And then his brother was chief of police for 20th district on Foster Avenue on the north side. And that was during some of the peak corruption in Chicago when it came to not only the politicians but also the police. So it was very, very deep rooted, put it that way.
And did that influence quite a bit of your upbringing? I mean, with the way that the
Well,
Chicago.
let's just say it made me very cynical.
Yeah.
But when I went to when it was in LA, you could never do that with try that with an LA police
Oh
officer.
yeah.
They'd haul you right in for bribery. So yeah, that was once again, that's a long time ago. That's a different age, different time,
Yeah.
different generation.
So you're a blue collar background and the such. When you decided that, hey, maybe this isn't for me, right? Like maybe I don't
Mm.
want to be doing this quite a bit. Was that when you made a turn as it relates to being interested in going to college, or what kind of prompted that,
Well,
pivot?
I saw a couple real bad things. I remember a guy running up a ladder carrying a boom to set up a boom, and he hit electrical wire, and killed them. And I've seen a lot of several bad things happen, accidents, stuff like that. But I think the good part of that is growing up that way. It taught me a very, very good work ethic, which I try to pass on to my kids. Is I'm gonna put in a tough 8 hour day or 9 hour or 10 hour day or whatever. I was accustomed to working hard. I was accustomed to being like worn out after work. I was accustomed to that. So when I got into the white collar world, which I wanted to do, because I'm saying like I'm not humping shingles up this 3-story ladder, for the rest of my life. No way. And so I think it did teach me well, first of all, it gave me a certain respect and appreciation for people, that are blue collar workers, because I was one and my whole family was. But at the same time, I said, hey, I want to kind of step it up, get into the white collar world, and maybe make a lot of money, and and live a good life without backbreaking work. So that's what I think. That's what gave me my work ethic, and I took that attitude into every job I had, and so I think that's probably why I was fairly successful at it.
And you went to school here in LA, right?
Well, back and forth. In fact, oh God, if you look at it, and I broke it down when I wrote my book, I went to 9 different schools in over a 10-year period. So, and I can almost name almost every single one of them, from the Catholic school, went to Catholic to public, and then back to Catholic, then back to public, then back to Catholic. So, yeah, I went most years out here in California, where I went to Carmelite High School, Crespi, and then for that I went to a Jesuit college. Pretty much a common thing for the Catholic school kids. They would end up going to like a LMU or a Santa Clara, or Pepperdine, whatever. But the bottom line is the Chicago. I brought the Chicago kind of attitude with me wherever I went.
So you mentioned this book. What's the name of the book? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's going to sound funny, but it's called Executive Hoodlum,
Okay.
and it just came out like a spur of the moment when I was finished writing, and it took me like 5 years because, as you know, Larry Elder was supposed to write it, and after he wrote the first few chapters, I read it. I go, Larry, this is not something I would say, And I finally said, well, let's face it, I'm an Italian Irish guy from Chicago. You're a black guy from Crenshaw. The street vernacular is much different. And so he goes, you're right, you have to write it. I go, what? I ain't got to write it. No, why don't we got no big argument about it. I remember having that argument with him. And finally I said, okay, I kind of bit the bullet and said, okay, I have to do it. And he goes, but if I like it and you do a good job, I'll put my name on it. Because remember, this guy's sold how many bestsellers, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
he
he,
even ran for governor.
yeah, oh yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And so and he helped every week. I would go to his house, and he had the tape recorder with a woman named Tina Marito, who would help me as well, and we'd format it, and and he would have he'd have guests, because anything I couldn't authenticate with with film or with news or with police reports or any proof of authentication of what I'm telling him to be true. I had the people that were with me at the time be in his house and record it, uh, to say, "Hey, this is how I remember this incident," right? So he had some very colorful people at his house. We interviewed some, some alleged mob guys, and one guy that's in, was in the witness protection program. We had a couple other, hoodlums, that they're like biker types, and including my cousin Mike, who was at the time the sergeant at arms of the Chicago Outlaws. And so he was able to collect all that, that day. And even my brother, may he rest in peace, my younger brother, who I was telling you about. They had him, interviewed him in here, and so that's the weird thing is the people that he's interviewed, how some of them in that room died violent deaths
Yeah.
afterwards. So it was kind of a weird thing afterwards to write kind of, what at the end, like an epilogue that says, here's what happened to this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. It's kind of, I mean, it's fairly depressing. And then now just recently, like I said, I lost 3 more since I've been 50, and and nothing's natural causes, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the book, it really kind of describes what it's like to have an executive role in a large publicly traded kind of company, but on the flip side, there's a lot of walks of life that you were able to experience. Correct?
We'll put it this way: it makes you kind of walk that fine line, because you can't really turn your back on your family no matter what. But let's just say it was challenging to balance higher education and career path, or pursuing a career, and dealing with a family that's always in trouble with the law, or you get that phone call, hey, you got to bail me out, I'm in jail, or hey, here's a subpoena because your cousin's got pinched for illegal weapons, and your name's on the agreement. So it just makes it very challenging. And also my father, because of course my father, I had to handle a lot of his legal stuff, because every time he went away, I'm getting the call, like, you have a call from, whatever, Broward County Correctional Institute. And I'm like, oh, great. So now I got to pick up the phone, and it costs me what, $10 a minute or something ridiculous, right? So it's going to cost me more. Then I got to go get him an attorney. Then I got to, always be involved in his problem. So I did that for a while, and then I really got fed up with it and said, look, you got to stay out of trouble. I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And I get into that in great detail and some of the things, that the stunts that he pulled. But yeah, I was able to get even on like, I learned every time he would do something, if he gets somebody, and he'd get it, take advantage of them money wise, or beat him out of money on a deal or whatever, he would always around on it, his exact words were, well, did you learn anything? That's what he would say. So I used to hear him say that, and he said that to me a couple times when he got the best of me when I was a teenager. And I'm like, so when I turned the tables on him, and I describe it in one of the chapters in my book, which was just a happenstance thing, that I was able to, oh, okay, now I know he's locked up right now. There's nothing he can do. He's not going to get much information. So here's what I'm going to do. I went back to Chicago, and once again, I can't get into it. It'll take too long to explain, but I was able to get him back. And I so bad and he I got him. He knows I got him. And my relatives would call, did you really do that? Did you really do that? I go, who can say?
Yeah.
I don't know. I go, you can figure it out. And so I so bad wanted to say, hey, so did you learn anything?
Oh man.
But I didn't get that opportunity. I so bad wanted, because but it would be me admitting it. I knew it drove him more nuts for me denying it.
Just stewing
Right.
in it, right? Just
Exactly.
thinking about it.
But funny, because my brother, like I said, may rest in peace, he used to say every time I talked to, he called him Mario, but our dad, right? That was one of his aliases. He'd say, so every time I would talk to him, he goes, that Johnny, that Johnny, that Johnny. He goes, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, I got to be honest. He goes, I would have done the same thing. So
Well,
he was acknowledging that I beat him at his game, and that he would have done the same thing to me had it had it been switched around.
yeah, and the way that you describe him in the book, which it's a great read. Truth be told, I've read it a couple times. Very charismatic guy
Oh
with
yeah.
your dad, one of those that could just turn on the charm when
Hmm.
there was a moment of
Hmm.
being in a situation or something like that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he was a very talented singer too, if I remember correctly.
Interestingly enough, and I went through, when I was doing my authentication, I went through a lot of his like scrapbooks and stuff like that. He had so many offers, and he turned them down, and he would not show up. It was weird. I mean, He used to tell the story about Sammy Khan, famous songwriter, right? I mean, world renowned guy. And he used to tell me how what he a story about him and Sammy Khan. I'm like, this is bullshit, And then I'm going through scrapbooks and there's pictures with him at Sammy Khan's house, like holding his awards and stuff like that. And then he actually had a show called Mario's Place, and he had Sammy Khan on as one of the guys he interviewed, and he told the story just like my father told it. So I'm like, Jesus, that was true.
Interesting.
Yeah. So and I have the film somewhere of him saying it, and he was very close to being booked on Johnny Carson, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And I think Sammy Khan tells the story when they're interviewing him, and that would have been it. But if you go back, he he was in all these different operas, right? He was offered, and I saw one of his contracts. He was making 10,000 a week singing at the Dunes Country Club. I mean, that's since been torn down. I recall, but I see these contracts. Like, how do you blow? How do you blast through that money so fast? So anyway, and then I saw other things where he had offers for, I think it was like the New York Metropolitan Opera. I mean, something that was like anybody that was the right of mind would have said, this is a great career
Yeah,
path.
it's a golden
Yeah, it's
opportunity.
like, but he did not want to he did not want to build his career. He wanted to be at the top like that. Like, oh, I make more money conning people out of their money by telling what I'm going to do. I make 100,000 a week and not 10,000 a week by stealing.
Okay, so he was into the fast money.
Yeah, he's in the fast money. So he did not want to, because if he had just built his career like anybody else in, say, in the music industry, at some point, he would have the audience and to support his lifestyle. But he didn't want to go that route. It was almost like he wasn't satisfied getting money the legal way. He had to feel like he beat somebody out of it to gain satisfaction. So it was weirdest thing, but it sure seemed that way.
Interesting. It's I mean, interesting background with the dynamic of your dad and the such, and it's I mean, you do see some of the subtle similarities. I'm not going to say that there's a lot of similarities with the charisma and the fact that you've been able to
Mm.
meet a lot of people in all different types of walks of life.
Well, but remember, growing up all the way through college and maybe halfway through the first company I work with or the second company I work with, I used to try to deflect everything.
Yeah.
In other words, when people would ask me questions, they were very uncomfortable for you to answer. So I'd always make up something that was, kind of close to the truth, but it wouldn't be straight out lying. It's just I didn't want to bring that stuff up because I thought this could be detrimental to my career. And then, of course, I had other relatives go public, and that caused problems for me because of the names. And when I was just starting my career at Microsemi, actually, because I remember getting called into the CEO was Phil Fry at the time, and this had to be around. I started there in, I think, 1989, but it wasn't until like in the 90s that some of the stuff came out, and I get called, hey, is this, do you know anything about this? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's my father. Yeah, it's my sister. But it's got nothing to do with me.
So as you're balancing that line, I mean, you touched on Microsemi, right?
Mhm.
Microsemi was a very interesting company. Why don't you describe a little bit about that and what you were doing over at Microsemi?
Well, again, I started Microsemi in 1989 as a sales engineer. And I remember, I interviewed there very, very, I'm not going to say unorthodox, but there are a lot of cast of characters there between Phil Fry and Dr. Sandera and a guy named Kurt Schumacher, kind of old school, crusty engineer types. And once again, in those age, it was a little bit different in terms of the way people could behave in the office.
Yeah.
Before now, you say one thing, you're out of line, you're in HR. But it was really old school, and it was solely mill standard 19500. They didn't do anything really in the commercial world. But at that time, even the commercial, the commercial airlines, the commercial business was used, 19500 qualified parts, and it just got more expensive. And then as the reliability stuff relaxed and things became more efficient, they transitioned out of the higher, because everything they bought from 19500 mill standard at the time was probably overkill because of what the construction we had. Like, it was a hard glass, metallurgically bonded, voidless package, and it was something that was very good for the space industry. But it's like airline industry say, look, I need a Volkswagen. You keep selling me a Cadillac.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things. And then as it transitioned, as the prices went up, and we started more focused on the military and space, a lot of that commercial airline stuff or commercial air stuff went away. And then we had to supplant it by doing plastic parts or equivalents in plastic that weren't quite as expensive. So
And
yeah, so
for
that was the original Microsemi, and then it started to grow by acquisition and some organic growth. We had a lot of acquisitions.
let me
Mm.
describe real quick. When you say mil standard 19500, that's a military standard or specification that has a number of different uh, testing requirements that are needed in order to ensure that a part, when you purchase it, isn't just commercially sourced. It has all these different capabilities that deem it mil standard 19500 qualified. Correct?
Yeah, and to be honest, I started back before I started at Microsemi. I was with a company called Elmo Semiconductor, and they were during the '80s. I was there during the '80s, where it was a big buildup of military with Ronald Reagan, and a lot of stuff was hybrids. And at Elmo Semiconductor, we would take, standard die from some of the big principals at the time. Some of them have merged and no longer exist. But I was a program manager for a while there, where I was in charge of doing things that were mill standard on a lot by lot basis, because the package, it had to be a ceramic, hermetic package versus the plastic part that you would get off the shelf. And then I take it through the process, through, either 38510 at the time, and then 19500. And of course, there was the method spec 750 and 883. And some of these were also used in the medical field too, for something that's high reliability. So that's kind of how I cut my teeth in understanding the mill standards. So I did that for quite a while. And then when I took the job at Microsemi, I was actually selling the qualified part that was on the QPL.
And you were part of leading the worldwide sales, if I remember correctly,
Well,
right?
I was promoted up the ladder. There was a lot of interesting stories there, because we went through, got another CEO, Jim Peterson, who was the eventual CEO that worked the deal when Microchip acquired Microsemi back in 2018, I believe it was. And he's the one that went in for the very aggressive M&A policy, or the M&A, what we did in order to build ourselves up to not just a mill standard house. So anyway, yeah, we would acquire other companies, but that mill standard stuff was pretty much the foundational revenue of Microsemi for many years. And then when Jim came along, he started really focusing on driving shareholder value and bringing in some other products that were more exciting to the institutional investment world.
Yeah, one of my favorite things in talking with you, John, is always finding a way to toe the line of, the corporate world and other things. Earlier, we were talking about while you were over at Microsemi, that I believe it was over in India, that you had a trip out there, and you, for lack of a better term, dodged a bullet as it relates to something that had happened that was
Well,
catastrophic.
wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah. So why don't you tell a little bit about that particular
Oh
instance?
yeah, well, like I said, when Jim Peters took over, I was a sales engineer, then I went to regional sales manager, then I went to director, and then I went to director of North America. Then I became vice president of North America, and then eventually vice president of worldwide A&D sales. So I picked up Europe and I picked up Asia, and we had a very interesting kind of a hybrid business model and sales force. But to make a long story short, when I was promoted to VP, I had to attend a lot of the space forums, and some of them were in China, some of them were in India, some of them were in other places in Europe. And yeah, I left a hotel just after a terrorist attack happened there, and I forget. I think I was on my way to Ahmedabad, and I remember my phone just blowing up when I landed. Everybody's like concerned about. It. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I noticed the extra security at the airport, where before you even checked in the hotel, you had to go through a metal detector, and they had, as you pull up to the hotel, they had people looking underneath the car for bombs. You had bomb sniffing dogs, so it was quite the experience.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was, and then it was funny, because then I had to give a presentation like, there was, India has a very robust space program with ISRO, and afterwards I went back to the hotel, and then I'm turning the TV on. I'm like, whoa, I'm seeing what happened. And so I was like, can you believe it, guys? We just got out of there. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting trip. But I'll tell you, I think even growing up in Chicago and being familiar with the projects there at the time, and I'm not sure what it's like now. I haven't been back there in a while, but when you see like real poverty, like it is in India, you certainly have an appreciation of, because poverty here would probably be middle class there.
Interesting.
Because when you see people just living out on the street, and it's like, wow. I mean, this is how it is. So I'd come home, kiss the ground.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you would come home, it's not like you're hanging out with just random people. You had a pretty interesting set of people you associate with that you would call your close friends here in
Mhm.
the local area, and it's giving you. And you reference this a number of times in the book. It gives you interesting walk of life that many people will read about in the papers here in LA, but
Mhm.
not necessarily get firsthand exposure. So give a
Well,
little description around that.
well, initially it was pretty awkward to talk about that stuff, but at some point I used it to my advantage where I'd say, okay, you know what? I'm just disclosing. I'm tired of hiding this. It causes me too much stress.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, hey, look, here's what's going on, and and I would show them like the videos, like, yeah, here's my father in the news, right? Oh,
Yeah.
here's my sister on a talk show. Oh, here's a federal subpoena, or here's no, the best one for the engineers were, oh, hey, I was at the Playboy Mansion last Saturday. Oh, here's some pictures, and so I use that to my advantage because if I'm in the lobby in a sales call, it's like, I can see John, or I can see this other boring guy from
Yeah.
that doesn't have a good story to tell.
Well, and
So
people
so
can't
that's how I
fathom it.
use it to my advantage because then people wanted to see me because they're like, hey, what are you going to say? It's almost like having I think I described it as like a reality show,
Yeah.
and every time I visit it was like the next episode. So I would begin sharing some of my misery and some of the good times as well. And I think that helped where people would rather see me because they'd like to hear the next story.
Yeah,
And
most people would associate, people that are working in the science and technology field, maybe parking cars at the Playboy Mansion, but
Mhm.
not actually going in and getting to meet a number of different people. At the time, was one of the biggest parties here in LA, right?
Well, when I met Hef, it was, and I describe it in my book how I got, it's like I didn't even want to go out. I was like kind of stuff down, I just got divorced and I was kind of down. Like, yeah, I'd rather stay home, have a scotch and hang out with my German Shepherd, than go out into the Hollywood scene. But then as I did, I became friends with all these, high roller types, and some of them I really like, some of them I could care less about. But guys like Scott Baio, we became, like I said, very, very good friends. And we'd play golf, we'd hang out, go out to clubs and have a lot of fun. So it was kind of a kind of mix. But when when I first met Hef, I was kind of tripping out because it was a surprise. Oh, come on out. It was Jake and Dr. Mark Saganar. May
Okay.
he rest in peace. He passed away. I was actually is in his wedding, and when he got married for the second time, and we were good friends, and he'd come over here a lot, and he was Hef's doctor, and he's the one that arranged it because he thought I was showing self-destructive behavior or something. So, and he knew the things I was capable of doing, unfortunately, the bad things, and so he's the one that him and Jake are the ones. Hey, come on out here. And so I met Hef, and it was kind of a surreal moment. It's like, I'm this street kid from Chicago
Yeah.
who's meeting Hugh Hefner. It's like, and then have him invite me, say he wants to invite me to his parties, saying, "Hey, I'm just coming off a divorce too, and I'm going to start having parties, and I'd like you to be my guest." I'm like, I'm sitting there trying to hide my excitement, trying to be professional, and meanwhile, I feel like Ralph Cramden on the honeymoon. Was like, right? So it's one of those moments where I'm trying to keep my cool, but I'm so excited, like, wow, this is cool. He figures once I start meeting a lot more girls or women that it would take my mind off the like the divorce and the
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I think it was pretty effective because like that, and it was the first few parties were like, your head's on a swivel. Like, hey, that's that one, that's that. It was
It was the who's
fascinating,
who, right?
but yeah, but it wasn't, once again, it wasn't. It was very classy. In other words, you screw up the Playboy match, the screw will throw you out.
Yeah, and you're banned for life,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So it's not like, some people think, oh, it's like Caligula. It's not like that at all. It was very, very tame for the most part. But it was fun. It was fascinating, and like I said, the guy really knew how to throw a party. And I'd been up there. Oh God, I don't know how many dozens and probably hundreds of times over the time where until he passed away. Um, So I'd been up there. I think my first party was in 1998. Or no, it was a little bit before that. Um, in fact, the first party was what it was at the. I remember this distinctly because it was the house from the Godfather with the horse's head scene.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because I'm getting because at the time I was getting pulled. I was in a limo and I was getting dropped off there, and I'm like, wow, this place looks familiar. And then somebody told me, "Yeah, this is the house from the original Godfather." And then when I saw everything, I remember that scene. I'm like, "Wow." And so, I'm on my phone. Yeah, I think I had a flip phone at the time. That's all
Yeah.
I was in. I'm like, "Hey, man, you're never gonna guess." Call my friends in Chicago and my cousin. You're never gonna guess where I am. And hey, you got to see this place. Remember the Godfather? Yeah. So,
And this is before, picture phones, so
yeah,
they're having to take your word for it while
yeah,
you're on the phone.
exactly. It was pretty wild. So that was the first party. And then after that was one that we're actually at the Playboy Mansion, but this one was at that house. And I'm trying to remember. I think a guy named Lenny Ross owned that house, and he was some type of executive. And I knew Lenny too. I got to know him over the years. But he owned that house, and I think that house was like listed for $100 million or something. It's just ridiculously expensive.
Jesus.
But it was beautiful. It had like a discotheque down there. They had this beautiful pool. They
Well, it's
had
iconic. It's one of the best films ever,
yeah,
ever
yeah. I
made.
mean, the house itself was absolutely unbelievable to look at. Like, wow, I didn't know this money. This, how can you? This money, how does this money even exist? How do you pay for a house like this, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was that. It was fun. It was exciting, So it was definitely something to write home about, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's, interesting because you go to one of these parties,
Hmm.
you come back home, you start your day job again, and you start, selling 19500 components, and you start going back into,
Yeah, quite a bit difference in excitement, I suppose. Oh,
oh,
hey,
yeah.
look at this. So yeah, but using that, because then I'd be excited to tell somebody. And then remember, a lot of these clients I've known for a while because I was a sales guy and I'd be seeing them in. And my first territory was in the South Bay when it was remember used aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
So it was still used aircraft before the consolidations and the sell-offs and the mergers and stuff. And then so these guys that I've known for a while, these engineers and buyers and commodity managers, and uh, it was fun to share those stories, and it was exciting, especially when I started getting oh, here's pictures and stuff like that. But at the time, these pictures weren't like on your phone; these were
Yeah.
pictures you had to actually get developed.
Okay, like a Polaroid or
And well,
something
I
like
don't know
that,
Polaroid.
or
I remember they used to have these little throwaway cameras.
oh,
Remember
yeah, the
those on?
disposable
Yeah,
cameras, the one
disposable
you
cameras.
wind them a little
So
bit,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I used to use that for the first few parties, and you were technically not supposed to bring cameras to the party, but some of us were able to get away with it only because we like knew all the insiders,
Oh, I
like
mean,
Mary O'Connor, Captain Bob.
this would be the first time you ever broke the rules though, right, John?
Yeah, exactly. No, but like I said, and remember my wife actually, yeah, I actually met my wife there.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we and she was college educated and and a print model and all that, and so we started going up there together after that, and then she became friends with a lot of several of the playmates and the people that kind of ran the show. Mary O'Connor, remember the girls next door?
Mhm.
So every Monday she would play cards with Mary and some of the girls there, the playmates, and then Scott and I would go up there and kind of watch Monday Night Football with Captain Bob, or sometimes we'd like step out, smoke a cigar, and so that's kind of how this whole transpired. So once again, it seems like tall tales,
Yeah.
but that's how it happened. That's how it worked out. And so later on in life, when I'm telling people this that are maybe from my neighborhood or something like that, and they like, oh, come on, you're Commander McBragg, it's like, no, this is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I've been doing lately. So yeah, it does become a little bit awkward when you're having a conversation and somebody's like, that guy's full of it. That guy's making up stuff.
Yeah, but it breaks up the monotony that you would have in a lot of these dinner meetings or like at different conferences or whatever it may be. I mean,
Mhm,
you start hearing a lot of similar types of discussions. And here comes
mhm,
John talking about, yeah, this weekend when I was over there with Hugh Hefner. I mean, that's an interesting story. Now,
mhm.
people are interested in hearing that because it's just not a classical one, especially in our industry, right?
No, I rarely meet um, executives in either in the semiconductor world or the aerospace world that have similar backgrounds to mine. I'm sure there are some, but maybe not as extreme, especially when it comes to the family I'm from. So like I said, I'd probably think it was kind of a rare thing. Like I'm sure there's some story out there that's just like mine, but to this day I haven't met it yet.
So going back to Microsemi, they ultimately get acquired by Microchip, right?
They gave him a call about Microchip, and it was a pretty good big deal because I think Microchip was evolved in the periphery. I think when they acquired Atmel of having space for military qualified parts, and I actually was the only guy from the fourth floor, the corporate office that went along with the deal because they didn't have anybody that probably had my experience in the A&D world and certainly not in the government affairs world. And they were not accustomed to that. And it took a while to, educate everybody about, hey, here's how this world works. And I think the first time I presented to their executives, I was like, wow, this is how complex that world is. And to see how government works, some of it can get pretty ugly. When you see stuff on the news with whether it's DOD or whatever agency, and the slow nature of how the government moves and how long things take. And I mean, it's hard enough product life cycle for military stuff is long, but then when you add government to it, and by the time a program becomes funded and gets to production, it's a long way out.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think that Microchip kind of learned when they acquired Microsemi. But they were quick studies at it, and they were I mean, it was a well matched company. Steve Sanghi just took over back as
Yep.
CEO, and he's kind of straightening the ship after a down cycle. And yeah, I think our last earnings report was pretty good, and kind of showing that we're back in the right direction.
And you guys are the leaders in a number of different segments, but the one that overlaps with where you and I,
Mm.
end up crossing over is in the military aerospace regime, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by far, we're the largest supplier of military and space qualified products in the planet, and there's nobody even close. I mean, our market share has got to be anywhere between 19, and I'm just estimating 19 and 26%, either North America or globally. And I think the next closest person is maybe 5%. And it's not just one product type. I mean, we have a very broad based product line. So we probably build tens of thousands of qualified devices, and not just transistors, diodes, but field programmable gate arrays, linear regulators, pulse width modulators, you name it, and saws. We do quite a few. Like I said, very broad based product portfolio, and you're going to be hard pressed to find a military space program that doesn't have very high content of microchip, you know, microelectronics.
Well, I mean, just in my email last week, there was a portion of the nuclear triad that is interested in engaging with microchip yet again. So it's mil aero, but all these different pieces that allow the government to operate and function. It's quite interesting with the current landscape of what microchip is able to do. You have not only helped to push the charge in growing that aspect, but you've also dovetailed outside of the DoD a little bit.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of engagements that you've had with local governments at particular states, but also with the Department of Commerce. Why don't you describe a little bit about your influence that you've had in there and how that's you really put microchip on yet again a fast trajectory
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah, well, this process started several years ago, and I know the Chips Act, the Chips and Science Act, which eventually was passed and was implemented. That was called several different things as the bill itself evolved. I think it was like the Chips for America Act or the Frontier Act, and then the ITC was later dropped into the Chips Act to help motivate onshore production of semiconductors. So to go back and answer your question, it started with the lobbying process, and once again, we are a member of SIA, and I'm actually one of the board of directors alternates because Steve Sanghi is the actual representative. But when he came back from being chairman of the board and getting ready to retire, and then came back as CEO, he has got his hands full operationally. So I'd kind of take that responsibility off of him, and I would represent Microchip at the SI board of directors meetings. And there's a lot of lobbying and marches to the Hill, but it became more complex because SIA, obviously Semiconductor Industry Association, like, well, this is, I think a lot of politicians or a lot of people on the Hill said, hey, this is kind of self-serving to the semiconductor industry. We need to hear back from other industries. So I think I helped bridge the gap between the SIA and the AIA, Aerospace Industry Association, that showed on why this is important to the U.S. military because there are companies out there that have exited um, building military parts to pursue the high volume commercial world. And so it was up to me to kind of get that message to say, hey, this is why it's important to the guys in the aerospace world because they have the most vulnerable supply chain. And once again, a lot of people coming out, they don't go into the military world. They go into the commercial world. So I think there's a certain amount of talent and workforce that you lose as things are commercialized. Because, like I said, smart devices, smartphones, tablets, iPads, those are very high electronic demand. And, when the military is out there, they're selling, I'm selling 25 pieces of a space level part to a prime contractor. And that's all they use for the year. So the high mix, low volume model is a tougher model, and that's why a lot of people exited it. But so getting that message across to Capitol Hill and trying to get the bill over the finish line was somewhat challenging, but they finally did. And then, of course, to figure out how they're going to allocate to certain companies to determine, who gets an award, went based on several studies that we engaged with years ago and then kind of got refreshed as an administration's changed. And then if you look at the Commerce's own report on where the shortages lie when we're having those big shortages during COVID, it was 75% or almost 100% of things Microchip built.
Yeah, it
Whether
was all state of the practice,
well,
right?
yeah, well, a lot of us was older generation or older technology node microcontrollers, and a lot of it was stuff that we built for the military. And I think there's some optoelectrical stuff, and I can't remember. I mean, I remember helping you know data to put in these reports, and then I'd visited Commerce a couple times, or I'd ran into people from Commerce at different conferences, and explain that why they have to pay attention to microchip because here's why we're critical. Here, this matches right up with what you're saying is your shortage, and this is the stuff we build, and most of it we build onshore.
It's interesting to kind of frame this out a little bit. The Commerce report, their own report, comes out and says that state of the practice, optoelectronics, analog mixed signal,
Mhm.
like you said, a lot of the stuff that Microchip makes is the largest need that
Mhm.
the United States has domestically. Yet the CHIPS initiative seemed to have gone in a complete different direction and funded all of these state of the art, companies that has one scratching their head. Which report are they reading? Are they reading the report
Well,
on?
it's interesting you say that, Dan, because once again, I don't think you could justify saying, hey, well, there was a shortage of state of the art products. There wasn't. Once again, if you look at it, eventually, everybody just wants to jump in the game to try to get some of the funding. But once again, it comes with caveats, and it came with a bunch of other compliance stuff that made the investment. Because remember, this wasn't kind of a corporate giveaway. This was basically saying we're going to cover 10 to 12%. I don't forget the numbers, 10% of your capex. In other words, you have to invest in there, and then we'll make it worth your while by covering 10% of your capital expenditures to incentivize you to do this stuff onshore or to expand your operation onshore. So, so that's what made sense. Plus, the ITC, the 25% tax credit, obviously helps the entire industry. Whether you're whether you're building older technology nodes or state of the art, it helps the industry, and it helps them, or it incentivizes them to build onshore. So, the problem is as the market dynamics changed, the original proposals were based on those dynamics. And once again, this is kind of slow moving. Now you got a change of administrations. And now they're maybe changing the rules a little bit to take some of the restrictions off because a lot of the caveats were pretty restrictive. And then when you start boiling it down, going, well, you know what, we're spending 90% of the money, you're going to 10%, but now you're dictating all this compliance, which really takes the incentive away. So I think, I know there's people in this administration and Commerce that are trying to remedy that, and I think they've changed the rule quite a bit and loosened it up. So the private public partnership aspect of this still stays in play, but it has changed. But anyway, that's kind of the history and how the Chips Act evolved, and but a lot of companies are I think are still engaged. I know we really received. We're the second company to receive a preliminary award.
Well, you're the first U.S. company.
First U.S. company, but also the first commercially because I think British Aerospace was the first,
Mhm.
and but they are not known as a commercial supplier of semiconductors or microelectronics.
Yeah, and you guys were able to, expand your, or potentially expand your footprint in 2 locations. You got Oregon, and then you've got Colorado as the
Mhm.
2 locations.
Well, don't forget in Massachusetts we have a facility in Lawrence and Lowell that builds a lot of the 19500 stuff, and I think there's a back end test facility or in Ennis, Ireland.
Mhm.
Um, and we have some other smaller facilities. Those are two biggest facilities. But do we have some presence in other states?
So I know that eats up quite a bit of your time. Not only handling the aerospace and military portfolio, but also the stuff that's happening with the Department of Commerce. However, you've been able to also find some time to work on what looks like a potential miniseries for your book.
Segue.
Yeah, so why don't you describe that a little bit in what that is looking like and kind of the vision around that?
Well, honestly, I was actually on a flight from Frankfurt, Germany to Moscow. I was headed to Russia to do a space forum, and I was sitting in, and it was a Lufthansa flight, and I'm sitting next to this guy who kind of sees me kind of typing away and is kind of inquisitive, and this was just right after my father got into some kind of trouble, and it was in the news, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the reports, and I'm looking at this footage, and then I had my sister went on a couple shows, and I'm like, oh God, this is just what I need, right? So I'm looking through it, and then this guy was kind of curious, and maybe I don't know why, but he approached me and said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm so and so, and what do you do for a living?" I'm like, "Well, an executive at a semiconductor firm, and I'm headed to a space forum in Moscow." He goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Well, can you tell me about you?" And I'm like, I'm thinking like I'm a cynic. I'm like, "What is this guy going to pick my pocket?"
Yeah. Yeah, why
So
is he so
anyway,
interested in
yeah, I
me?
was interested in. Anyway, maybe it was my hideous appearance because I hadn't shaved and I was wearing like a probably like a V-neck something, and I had like probably tattoos that were showing. And he's like, "What's this guy doing in first class? This guy should be serving me a drink." So anyway, I said, "Well, you really want to know?" And I go, "Here," and I showed him like a news clip of my father. I go, "Here, this is what I'm dealing with right now." Oh, here's his police record because I had I had all my data. So he had his police record, and I'm like, and yeah, here's some other thing that would look disturbing. I'm like, I'll never see this guy again. Who cares?
Yeah.
So it turns out this guy was a major independent like movie producer, and I could literally get a call from this guy. I didn't get a call. I got a text from this guy like 5 years later. Hey, remember me? I'm Errol Blyberg from Blyberg Entertainment. I'm like, so, and that's how that started. So so it really started the interest in the life rights of that was before I even wrote the book. So after he had given me an initial offer for life rights, I said, "Well, look, I'm in the process of writing a book, and when it's done, I'll show it to you." And so after I did, I handed him a copy of it, and this was a year later or something. And he read it. He goes, "Well, we should change this deal into a." He goes, "There's enough content in this book to do like 3 seasons of a series." So it wouldn't be a mini series; it'd be like a regular series. So I'm like, "Okay, as long as the check doesn't bounce, I'm in." So that's kind of how it transpired. But then they got distracted doing feature films, and I know they did some big stuff with like Liam Neeson and some other big names, and the guy was a pretty successful guy. So a friend of mine from that you met, Corey Wiseman,
Mhm.
who was an agent for I think it was like William Morris or something. I never knew this, and he's a friend of mine from Chicago. He goes, "John, why don't you show me this? I'm working with Range Media, and we're doing Marketeers or whatever it was. It was a very successful show." He goes, "We'd love to work on this a little bit, right?" I'm like, "Okay, sure. Well, what does it take?" And he looked at he redid the sizzle reel and he kind of put his touches on it. And then I literally had dinner with him a couple days before he tragically had a massive heart attack when I think he was working on a project in Colombia. And I couldn't because I literally told him over dinner, "Look, if you're dealing with your back or whatever, you get your medical stuff done here in stateside." So he had fallen in the shower and did something to his back, and he went in and they gave him some pain meds, and then the next day he had more pain, and then they had where he actually had took a fall, picked him up in the ambulance, and then he had a massive heart attack in the ambulance and passed away.
Jesus.
So yeah, so now I'm kind of like a free agent, and I'm working with somebody else right now. But I haven't paid attention to it because I've really been preoccupied with not only the CHIPS Act stuff, but HPSC, High Performance Space Computer, and NASA and JPL, and quite a few of the principals that have adopted that
So
platform.
what's a HPSC for those that aren't
High
familiar with it?
Performance Space Computer, basically the next generation for space computing, and it's really it was a contract. It was probably we competed for this contract. Um, Over a couple years, and we were eventually down selected, and we were named the winner of the program. And it's been highly successful in terms of adoption, early adopters. I think last time I read it was like 70, somewhere between 70 and 90 companies have adopted this platform for the next generation for their space or their foundational space programs. And so I know that a lot of these are the same primes that I deal with, say the Lockheeds, the Boeings, the Raytheons, L3 Harris, and we're trying to build off that because some of the same technology may be used in the Golden Dome. So we're kind of in the process of trying to see what we can do if get how we get HPSC adopted to the Golden Dome.
So you're underselling it a little bit here because the first time they tried to do HPSC, it was a catastrophic failure, right? Boeing was leading the charge. They
I'm not here to throw any of my customers
no,
under
no,
the
no,
bus.
that's fine. I'll go ahead and do it. So Boeing did a horrible job at executing at the HPSC, and they were about to abandon it. And then they went back around
Mhm,
and they put together another, set of players. You have,
mhm,
JPL helping to coordinate this in concert with Microchip being the prime, and
mhm,
subs like Sci-Fi,
mhm,
helping to support the initiative. And out of that, not only has the program gotten, this resurgence as it relates to
mhm.
being what they expect or NASA was expecting it to become, but major milestone just happened, right? I believe tape out just
Yeah, we
happened.
we typed out what, it was a month ago or something like that, or this month? It was in
Yeah.
August. I don't recall. No, they like I said, the business unit for Microchip analysts are complete professionals. These guys are great engineers, and and even though they ran into some hiccups, they were able to straighten the ship. And it had to do with subcontractors that were give us a little bit of creating a couple little obstacles that we got over. But for the most part, we stayed on, and we kept at it, and we're at a good point right now. And like I said, the whole idea was to eventually commercialize this product. And
Well, and it's
mm,
interesting because there's been an appetite to see. I mean, even though this program is still ongoing, there is an appetite to see what the future opportunities are
mm,
building on that foundation.
mm,
Topics like what's an HPSC 2.0 look like, and
mhm,
how could that be framed, and what's the
mhm,
utility behind that. So there's a lot of different players that are, chatting about this on the government side and as such, seeing how do we, integrate those successes that Microchip has established for
mhm,
HPSC 1 for future uses. You mentioned, things like some of the president's top priorities, like
mm.
Golden Dome, for example. I mean, the framework for that is still being, developed right now, but uh, it's not common that a government program is foundational that has the ability to influence so many different
Well,
other
I
things.
think JPL NASA came to a difference. Like, hey, we want to get involved with private industry, and we don't want this to be a one off, because that's thing NASA was very good at. They're doing a one off for a mission, but now they want to create this part that can be used on multiple foundational um, platforms. So I think with developing this product and having it be able to have some longevity, and it's not just a one mission deal, is very beneficial in terms of budget, NASA's budget, and being able to have that kind of success that's more far reaching than just one mission. And I think that was what the goal was, and to be able to commercialize that product. So it is somewhat of a private public partnership, because Microchip does invest, and we're a good candidate for that, because that's right in our area of expertise and our core capability is making space level qualified parts. And this business unit came to us, I think via acquisition. I can't recall, but this is very very good, very very solid division, and now they're being able to engage with the military and space, because they're going to be offshoot peripheral products that are, I think we did some PIC part, the HPSC PIC 64, I think it is. We're able to develop those based on that, on that project. So, and I think it'll lead to other space devices that are going to be complementary to HPSC, and I think it's going to be a bigger than we think it's going to be. I think a couple of people at conferences will call me and say, "Hey, John, I was just in this conference, and all they did was talk about HPSC."
Well, and they even have an early adopters program, right?
Correct.
Which is allowing people to go in and purchase some of these initial HPSC products and see what the utility is before it starts
Mm.
becoming mass produced, which is extremely exciting.
Yeah, I was told that from the gentleman that just had my previous job. He was a vice president of aerospace and defense sales. And just before he retired, I said, Bob, what's your take on this? I go, I've been doing the government and I've been out of the sales arena. I like to support sales and the things that I do, following programs and stuff like that and trying to win these programs. He goes, John, I honestly believe this is going to lead to, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue to Microchip over the years to come because it's been adopted by so many companies already. So he has high hopes of it. We have high hope for it, and I think we'll be successful.
Well, and it's interesting because we've talked about the understanding you have from a technical perspective, the reach that you have into the programs. But one of the things that we haven't talked about is your political reach as well. So I've been
Yeah.
fortunate enough to join you at a number of different Reagan defense forums, and
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we were a sponsor for the Reagan Defense Forum. Well, in this very district that we're in, and here in my house, one of the originators that founded the Reagan Defense Forum was Chairman Buck McKeon, who used to be the chairman of House Armed Services for many years. And of course, he's since retired, but he's the one that really started the program there at the Reagan Library. And uh, you know, since I've known him for many years, and I used to live across the street from his brother and his whole family because of growing up in this neighborhood. Well, not growing up in this neighborhood, but living in this neighborhood. My kids growing up in this neighborhood. There was a lot of connective tissue, and I'd go to a lot of events where I'd see, either Buck McKeon, his brother, his son, his wife, and so he asked me if I'd be interested. Yeah, sure, but at that time wasn't terribly expensive to be a sponsor. Then, as you know, the number went up year after year after year, and I think the last time we did it, it was like pretty expensive, pretty pricey, and after that, I couldn't. It just got too high to be able to justify. But yeah, the point is then all those military leaders, they'd have their panels, they'd have prime contractors on, they'd have politicians there that would be voting on the CHIPS Act. And so there was a good way to be able to talk to these people and educate them about, the supply chain, especially the military and space supply chain when it comes to microelectronics, as it started to get more visibility. So yeah, those were times that we used in a very pragmatic and efficient manner to get the most bang for our buck for sponsorship, to be able to engage with both the military leaders and lawmakers on the merits of it.
so this was one of those instances where you have a lot of stories, John. I mean, you have a larger than life, set of things. Playboy Mansion, and I'm over here, I'm running worldwide sales and all these different types of things. When we went to the Reagan Forum, it was the first time where I had heard a bunch of stories of, oh, I know this congressional person, I know the CEO of this defense prime, and seeing the warm reception that you got from each of the people that you were telling me about for years of knowing each other.
Mhm.
And I remember going into talk and having a private meeting with former Congressman Garcia
Mhm.
and stepping to the side and saying, look, this is the landscape of what we're looking to do. This is how it impacts you on,
Mhm.
I believe he was on a defense appropriations, correct?
Well, I know he sat on oversight on, I think he was in NASA and space. I think he was with that, and I think he was on the appropriations. I'm not sure if it was on House Armed Services. I have to go back, right? But Mike's a great guy. I know his family, his son, his wife, real super guy. Hey, ex-fighter pilot, F-18, and I think he's a graduate of Annapolis.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, real unique guy. And I know they with the gerrymandering in this district, he ended up losing his seat, but not by much. Even though it was like, as a Republican in this district, it was tough because I think it was like +8 Democrat or something. So for him to be able to win the last two elections with having a disadvantage, he appealed to a lot of people. So yeah, I can and nothing but great things to say about
But it
Mike.
was interesting because most people, when they say they know politicians, it's
Mm,
something where they'll just contribute to their fund. They'll see each
mm,
other. It's a handshake, and
mm.
that's it. You're greeted here with a big old hug, and he says, "John, okay, what's going on here? I'm hearing this. I'm hearing this in the papers, or someone
Oh,
just briefed me on this. What's the reality here? And how
mm,
can Microchip, play a role in
mhm,
helping out with the larger
mhm.
portfolio of the defense stuff?" And it was that moment where I realized that, man, your stories, they are larger than life, but there's so much
Mm.
reality to it, right? I mean, it's something where you're not sitting there just shaking, "Hey, do you remember me? I'm John." No, it's like, "Hey, I mean, he
Well,
picked you out of the
I
crowd.
like to think after 4 decades in the industry that somebody would know me and be think favorably. But, no, and once again, this is years and years of being part of the AIA board of governors because that's how I meet a lot of these executives over the years, and over the years we become friends and very familiar with each other and very familiar with the programs and very familiar with the, compliance and very familiar with the semiconductor requirements and the vulnerabilities in the supply chain. So when you take that message to Washington and be able to say, "Hey, look, this is why this is important. This is why this should be funded," you have a good argument because you can show them, say, "Hey, look, here's the latest data that shows 7,000 companies in last year just dropped out of this market space, right?" And so, this vulnerability has to be addressed. And I think some of the same people, because a lot of the aerospace guys show up to the Reagan Defense Forum, and these are a lot of the guys I know from AI for being involved and on their board of governors for many years. So yeah, I think it's a certain familiarity where I see these guys all the time, and we socialize and have cocktails once in a while together, dinners, lunches, whatever.
Well, this is the reason I know the C-suite of Northrop Grumman. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's through you, through the Reagan Forum. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, those introductions were invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see that connection and how that has helped to integrate into some of the successes that Microchip is having. Now, built on those successes, John, what's the future of Microchip? I mean, it's a very uh, uh, I would call it an anchor company in the semiconductor industry. It's not one that's wobbly, that seems to be questionable on its future. It seems like it's really not only driving full force, but there's a lot of opportunity for growth. Where do you see the
Well,
big
so
play?
I remember I'm more of the A&D guy,
Yeah.
and so I can only speak to that. But I think just in general, I don't want to say anything that's gonna that's going to either contradict or anything for the microchip board or our CEO. But what I do see in general, I see growth in the A&D world, mainly because of the HPSC. I really think that's gonna be a winner for us. I really do think. I mean, when you just in general in microelectronics, everything they're smart this, they're smart that. There's a lot of things going on in position navigation and timing, and I think Microchip has the products that are going to be able to address, the well, look, you got smart homes, you got smart cars, you got smart everything. Everything is starting to now use electronic content. And a lot of our older generation or our mature node products are staples in these programs. So they don't really get designed out. They're usually used in the next generation. And so if there's more and more gadgets that use microelectronics just in general, I think that's what's where you would see some growth driving in the microcontroller world. Now I'm sure there's other areas when you look at current market trends, but I'm going to leave our CEO to address those in the earnings calls. I don't want to go there and step on somebody's
Well,
toes in
I'll
one of
I'll
those
I'll
business
pivot
units.
then a little bit. I mean, you guys have been influential in, the I'll call it the first line of defense for programs. But I mean, even influencing things like backups to GPS has been another area that you guys
Mhm.
have been playing in. I believe it's called E-Loran, correct?
Correct. Yeah, back in 2018, in fact, I was one of the guys that was one of the torchbearers for the 2018 National Time and Resilience Act. That was great bipartisan support, I think, in the Senate. Ted Cruz and Ed Markey, who probably in general couldn't agree what time it was, were agreed that we do need a backup system for GPS because it's very vulnerable. I mean, especially in light of space being a going to be a contested arena in wartime, and I think the Russians have shown they can destroy a satellite. So have the Chinese. So I think that kind of brings to bear the vulnerabilities we have because right now GPS is a single point of failure for position navigation and timing. So I think that needs to be addressed with a terrestrial, and it was put in the bill that a terrestrial system in the U.S. should be built. Now it's been a while and it hasn't, but as I understand it, that maybe the DOT is ready to go in that direction. But I get updated on that, in the next couple weeks. But yeah, I think it's something that's uh, once again, I don't think people understand the vulnerabilities of where we are in this. And I think a terrestrial system is definitely needs to be built. And it's basically the old E-Loran. It would just be upgraded in all the, I think the 19 transmit sites around the United States. And there's other opportunities there. I think you're going to see that develop in other countries that want to have that commercial backup system. But also, once again, in deployable situations, wartime situations, you'd want a deployable E-Loran system in the event that there's some type of GPS glitch or there's some type of mitigation or some type of disruption, because that would throw the timing off on everything.
With all the advancements that our adversaries are putting towards space, I mean, it's critical to have a backup plan because if
Mm,
GPS goes down, then it'll affect everything
mm.
from our military capabilities to our banking systems. It
Well,
would
sure, yeah. I mean, times think about timestamps on transactions. If somebody can spoof, you know, GPS for a couple seconds or a microsecond, could probably mean billions of dollars of lost revenue or billions of dollars of theft or
it would
billions of
shut
dollars.
down. It would shut down the nation as we know it. I mean,
I think it has that potential because I think a lot of times over the years you see these GPS disruptions, and a lot of times you won't hear in the news, oh, this has a fingerprint on it from this state, this enemy state, or whatever. So I think, yeah, it is vulnerable, and I think people see it, but I don't think your average person understands how vulnerable the position adaptation and timing is by having a single point of failure.
so pivoting back now on keeping your plate full with things. I mean, outside of the stuff that you're doing in the with Microchip, your book, your
Mm. Well, on the back in the position having came. I'm sorry,
yeah,
my
you're
my
fine.
my guy from that frequency time division will be pissed at me if I don't say, yeah, we build timing solutions in that division. So we have specialized boxes that we use for government agencies, and to basically secure time, make sure that the time you see is the time that is accurate. So we address those types of situations with the frequency and time and equipment. So just want to make sure I get that
No, no, no,
I
no.
get that out there, that hey, yeah, we have a division that specializes in that, and they're highly successful what they do, and they are probably the industry leader in it.
Yeah, where I was going with this is in the highly successful piece. One of the things that I would feel guilty not touching on is you have uh, quite a successful set of kids that are going through a variety of different
Oh yeah,
sporting
yeah,
related items. So
yeah.
describe that. I mean, in a nutshell, how is it
Well,
like you juggle in all
yeah,
these
as
pieces?
you're aware, I have two sets of twins, and they've all been on the principal's honors roll. They all have, I think 3 or 4 have 4.0s. One's got a 3.5, my underachiever, which I'm gonna have to get on her a little bit. But, once again, and they're all jocks, but, 3 of my 4 are at a very, very high level where, like my one daughter accepted a Division I scholarship to play soccer at UC Irvine, and she's doing very well there. She's doing very well on the physical test. She's played in every game so far, and she made the travel roster as a freshman. So she's doing very, very well, and she is definitely the one, has a very, very killer instinct when she gets on the field. But also, she's lettered in high school. She's lettered in 6 sports. She's one of the. I mean, I think I've showed you pictures where she's one of the most highly decorated athletes that ever came out of that school, and they've referred to her as the best athlete in the school, which she actually won an award for being the best athlete in the school.
Well, I make the joke with you that she's ran out of space on her Letterman jacket and have to get her a second or a third
Well,
one.
actually, they started putting the championships like on the back of her jacket. So there's like 3 of them from like there's flag football, there's MVP of the track and field team, there's the conference player of the year for the Foothill Conference, and there's the state 2 state title, or the state title and the CIF title, and then there's multiple league titles. So yeah, she's just ridiculously talented. She played softball, she played lacrosse, if you can believe it. She played flag football, she played soccer, and then she did track and field. And then there was what I said softball. Oh, she played basketball. and she lettered and everything. So she's, yeah, trans. And then her sister, Bella, who just left today to go to Texas A&M, she wants to major in sports marketing. She was a goalie in soccer, and she had a very, very successful club. But her and Gianna were on Legends when Legends won 2 national championships in club soccer and 2 state titles as well. And but she decided she didn't. She kind of left soccer in her last game. She hyperextended her elbow, but she could have gone to a Division II school probably on a scholarship. But she wanted the big D1 football team. She wanted to be involved in that, and she said, "I'm going to focus in on what I want to do as a career." So that's why she chose Texas A&M. She was looking at University of Tennessee and University of Tampa, and she eventually chose Texas A&M. Then the 2 younger ones that are now juniors in high school, my son Rocco, who, I mean, I think I sent you a video on him. He's a baseball player, tall kid. He's like 6'3", and yeah, he throws some pretty good velocity, but he's got great command, and he's been very
He's got an
successful.
arsenal of pitches.
Well, yeah, he just developed a cutter, and he's used it in his last few outings. But he, as a freshman, he finished. You know, he was a top pitcher as a freshman, top pitcher as a sophomore on the freshman team, then the JV team, and his ERA was ridiculous as a freshman. He pitched the most innings, and his ERA was .957. And then as a sophomore, he pitched. He was the leading pitcher in JV in terms of innings pitched, and he had an ERA of 1.014. I think he had 64 strikeouts, 39 walks. He had a good strikeout to walk ratio. And he's just a real confident kid on the mound, and he's still growing. And I think he's working on getting stronger and increasing his velocity. He made the all tournament team in some national tournament in Marietta, Georgia, maybe a month ago. And he's in a very good school when it comes to baseball. They've put out some pitchers in the major leagues. Hart High School put out Glass now. They put out Montgomery, who was the winning pitcher in Game 7 in Cleveland against the Cubs in 2016. And there's several other pitchers that went there. There's a good tradition of good pitchers that come out of that school. And hopefully Rocco, as a junior, as he develops, will can start qualify to pay Division I college or wherever he lands. We'll see how his development goes, because he's still a growing kid. I think he's throwing about 84, 85 miles an hour. He's still in the upper percentile, but he's got a 6'3" frame, and he only weighs like 158 pounds. So he's got a ways to go with his core strength to get his velocity up. And as long as he can maintain his command, I think he'll be all right. Then his twin sister, Carmela, who I'm convinced is the one that inherited the Costello crime gene, because she seems to get in trouble. She didn't do well in school, but she seems to find a way to get in trouble. She plays volleyball, and she plays club volleyball, and she did play for her high school, but I won't get into why she's not on that team. But once again, she also made the honor roll. I just got the letters in the kitchen, and she has a 3. She's my one that has a 3.5. So I'm gonna kind of get on her a little bit to kind of try to bump that up. So yeah, I'm very happy with my kids. Plus they're solid citizens. They're not, they're not ones that necessarily all get into trouble. They kind of, all their friends are pretty solid. Most of them are athletes like they are, and so they're really too busy to get themselves in trouble. So I'm just thrilled that I've got 2 that are going to college, and 2 that will probably be going to college in the years to come. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. That's one of the one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that these guys got off to the right track and right start. And maybe the next generation Costellos will have can outdo me, hopefully, and and just pass it on to the next generation. So that was my goal, and I think they're off to a good start.
Hey, John, you have a larger than life just background with everything from the book to the successes in the semiconductor industry, your family stuff. I mean, one of the biggest successes is, I think today, that there hasn't been one single piece of things that we have to bleep out. So I have to, it's probably
Yeah,
the
well,
best interview I've heard so far, where there's going to be minimal editing.
well, the minute you start talking about the book and that street side of me, it just triggers something in my voice and my attitude that's because when I explain something, I tend to explain it in street terms and not college, make college language that you'd be accustomed to. And it was so funny because I remember one of the first reviews of my book. It was, and I got pretty good reviews. I mean, if you look at it,
It's a great read.
and I got reviews. Well, there's some very, very bad language in there. I'm like, well, if I'm describing Chicago street life and the mob and the biker world and the drug dealer world and all those worlds, this is not going to use the Queen's English. Just doesn't come across right. It's
Exactly.
like so it doesn't lend itself to explaining the stories in the book without without reverting back to the street vernacular.
Well, John, I'm very excited to have you here on the podcast. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. I mean,
Mm,
even more of a pleasure to be your friend. Looking forward to not only how these different topics continue to progress, everything from your personal life to the
mm.
stuff that you're doing over at Microchip, and then potentially circling back and doing something at one of the facilities and seeing what it's like behind the scenes. So. Thanks again for joining me here, and looking forward to continuing our
Well,
friendship.
thanks for taking the time to talk to me and learn and getting all these other stories out. So I hope you enjoy. I enjoyed the interview. I just like hope it doesn't get me in trouble.
All right, thanks, John.
All right, thank you, Dan.